So the other day on Instagram, I made this post, and it's basically a video of me telling parents, like, hey, if your child is entering kindergarten and they don't know how to read yet, you need to stop playing around and teach your child to read. And I'll explain more about the post in a little bit, but it got some pushback. My audience on Instagram is a little different than my audience on YouTube. Honestly, my audience on YouTube is like probably 90% Black women. On Instagram, it used to be the same, but I had some posts go viral. And so now it's kind of a mixed crowd and more of like a traditional homeschooler crowd, which is full of different types of people. And they're like, you don't need to teach your child how to read by kindergarten. Like, don't push children to read by kindergarten, blah, 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 right? Now, of course, we know for our Black children, you need to have your child reading as they enter kindergarten. Now, this does not count if you're homeschooling because you have more time, but my background as a teacher, your background, if you guys have been watching my videos for a while, you already know what happens to children, to Black children, to poor children, to Hispanic children who enter the system behind. They stay behind, right? We've talked about that so much. But I got an interesting comment. Let me show it to you. I got an interesting comment that looked like this. I redid it. This is not like the exact comment, but it says, my son was in your class. You were fired from Baltimore City Schools, and my son still can't read good. Which is hilarious for a few reasons. Number one, okay, I don't think that this is actually like a real. I don't think this is like from one of my real parents, because then I went and I looked and I was like, this is like, I know all the parents of the kids who I taught. This is not like a parent that I taught. But I deleted this message and a few others or this comment, because I don't want there to be a messaging out there on my page that tells people don't teach your children how to read. And someone had commented something like underneath that was also equally as ridiculous. But I also thought, like, wait a minute, this is like the third time I've now seen someone say you were fired from Baltimore City Schools. And I'm like, I don't want that to be out there, because that's not true at all. And it tells me a few things. Okay, first, I'll show you how it's not true. Even though if you've been following me, you already know what actually happened. So the year that I was working in Baltimore, I was teaching fifth graders. And that's when I started like being a social media manager and doing a little bit more of my YouTube and stuff. And I already have a video about like why I quit teaching and decided to homeschool. I just could not see my children in the school I was teaching, where I was teaching. And I felt like I heard someone say, like, if I can't send my children to the school that I teach at, then that's like a problem. And I agree with that. And it's not because it was a bad school or because of the kid, well, partially because of the kids. I did not want my children to start acting like some of those kids up there. But it was mostly because my daughter would have been going into pre-K. And so a bunch of other teachers and I were talking like, okay, let's see if we can ask the principal if our kids can get the good pre-K teacher. Okay. There was one like really experienced pre-K teacher and one brand new pre-K teacher who was overwhelmed and probably going insane because it was her first year. She would say stuff to the kids like, my daughter knows how to read like this already. Why don't you guys? That's the shame that your parents don't teach you, etc. And I didn't want my child to go into her class. And so we kind of came to the realization that there was no way, there was like 6 or 7 of us. There was no way all of us were going to be able to put our like pre-K 4-year-olds into the good class. That's not there. It's not ethical. And our principal probably would not have let that slide. But even like, then I was looking at my chances, like, okay, what are the chances that a PWA is going to get into the more experienced teacher's class? Like, maybe I should just try. And then if she doesn't, then I'll just pull her out. Right. But then what will I do with her? I didn't want to keep paying for daycare. So I saw that class with the experienced teacher, the good teacher, walking by one day. And I just, like, they were all walking in a straight line. They were pretty quiet. So she had good control over the class. And then her assistant or her buddy was like telling the kids really harshly to get in line and stay in line. And I will admit, as a teacher, there are times where you got to be harsh with kids, and I've been harsh with kids. Okay, and I don't have pre-Kers, but I can see how you can easily get like pretty flustered. Like, be strict with them because all of them together can get kind of crazy. But I was looking at them and I was like, these are babies. And you guys, being a mother totally changes you as a teacher. Because before, you're like, you think these are your kids, but they're really not. You learn once you have kids, right? And I saw, instead of seeing like a bunch of 4 and 5-year-olds who were like wiggly and out of control, I saw my daughter there. And my daughter, who I know is extremely sensitive. And I just thought, like, why would I want someone yelling at my child to get into a straight line? Who cares? First of all, they're 4. Secondly, it's school. Like, why do we need a straight line? There's no one else in the hallway anyway, right? So then I was just imagining, like, okay, so in order to keep control in a lot of our schools, like we have and even in this school too, they talked about like, what's it called? Like a high structure environment, okay? Which is basically, like, I thought about it and I was like, that sounds like a prison. It sounds like you're preparing our kids for prison. I get it, because you need kids, in order for kids to learn, like, they do need to be focused a lot of the time, especially when you have 30 kids, you're in a Title I school, right? So high structure means like this minute they're doing this minute they're doing that minute they're doing that, right? And you don't let up at all. We're walking in a line. Here are the rules. 2 fingers, put a bubble in your mouth, all that crap, which is okay. But like, I don't want my child institutionalized, right? So then I saw that class walking by and I just decided, I can't do it. My kids can't go here, which is unfortunate because I thought that the principal was really like a really good leader. The things he was trying to enact was really good. Unfortunately, there were a lot of off people, so we couldn't even talk about culture. But anyway, so I left. I took a leave of absence, actually, because Amache was 2 or something like that. Maybe she was 3. It doesn't matter. But you could actually take a leave of absence to take care of your like your child until they reach school aged. That was like something that some teacher randomly told me. I looked it back up that night and I saw that it was true. Like, you can actually take a leave of absence. You're not going to get paid, but you don't like lose your job. They'd have to rehire you someplace at Baltimore City schools. So I told the principal that's what I was going to do. I wanted to be home with my kid. But I did not tell him that I was also planning on like upping my social media presence and working with other influencers as a manager in hopes of being able to afford, like, have my own business and afford homeschooling. So I don't remember how many, like, I do remember how many months later. Actually, I can just look right here. But my principal emailed me. So I had gone. So I left. I actually came to California with my sister. I was managing her. And then I got this email from my principal in March, which says like, hey, are you coming back to Maryland? Because, if you do, we're preparing. We would love to have you back. I know you're going to love the changes that we've made here. And so I hope this wasn't a response to, like, if you guys were watching me at that time, you knew I was like live streaming. I was talking about like just the various things that happen as a teacher in a Title I school. And I was complaining, right? Like, complaining. I just wanted to show people the realities of public school, which is what I'm also trying to do by telling these parents, like, sis, you need to teach your child how to read before they get to kindergarten if you plan on sending them to a public school. So anyway, and so maybe that's where like people are like bringing like, oh, she got fired because she was making these videos. That is not true at all. I did have a meeting with my principal, and then after the meeting, I came here, I talked to you guys about it. And he was like, oh, like, I see your videos. It's not that I disagree with anything that you're saying, but like, did you get permission from this and that? And I was like, kind of, sort of. And so I kind of just changed up the way I was doing videos and tried not to put the students in. I was also showing how great and awesome our students were, what was required to get them to pay attention, to love learning, etc. But whatever. So I'm like, maybe that's where these comments are coming from. Like, I was fired from Baltimore City Schools. But as you guys can see, that's definitely not true, because March 1st, 2019, my principals asked me to come back. I was still in contact with people at the school, and so I had heard that they were doing awesome and amazing things. But in short, I was just like, I'm probably not coming back there, and don't wait up for me. Like, don't wait up for me. But I would go back there. I feel like people think that when you leave teaching, that's it, that's all. No, you can go back. Like, whether it's like 10 years later, like when my kids are finished, or let's say I decide to send my kids to school in high school. Maybe I want to go back to teaching. I don't know. Teaching is fun for me. So maybe it's something I may do in the future. The thing about even the thought of someone thinking that I or anybody else was fired as a teacher in Baltimore City is so crazy. And it shows how out of touch they are from reality that Baltimore City is firing teachers. What? They can't even keep teachers. They cannot even keep the teachers that they have. Why would they be firing teachers? Let me tell you the things I have seen teachers do and not get fired for. Disclaimer, not at the school that I'm talking about in Baltimore, may or may not be. I've worked at a couple different schools. Here's some things that teachers have not been fired for. A white teacher calling students the N-word multiple times. Doesn't matter if the teacher is white or not. Any teacher should not be doing that. Administration knows. No. Does the teacher get fired? No. Gets sent away for mental health, comes back with the same student. Did we even move the student to a different classroom? No. Wow. That's the type of psychological abuse that I did not want to see my child go through, and I didn't even want my child to see another child being psychologically abused that way, right? That is not okay, and that's not something that I want my children to learn about when they're 6 years old. Other things, a teacher grabbing up a student by his shirt, legs dangling on a wall. I had to separate them. Okay, this was a little student. Now that this child was smaller than what a PWA is right now. Did anything happen to that teacher? Did they get fired? Of course not. Come on now. We barely even had a teacher in that classroom. So how could they fire that teacher? I'm not even sure how long or lengthy that legal process would be. Another teacher talking about a student's sexuality, like their perceived sexuality, not fired. I asked my academic coach that year, I was like, can you guys fire her? Because this is super annoying. And she said this, and the coach told me, it's hard to fire teachers. We can just encourage them to go someplace else. Let's encourage her to go teach in Montgomery County or Howard County, because obviously these kids are not the right demographic for her. And she was a Black teacher, but she could not handle it there, right? So anyway, that's one part of it. It's why would you even think that someone could just get so easily fired from teaching? That shows you're really disconnected from the educational field. Another thing is, now let's address the comment that the so-called I'm sorry. I'm just now just looking through some of these comments. I just see one that says, we had a teacher come to school every day and not teach her class because she couldn't go up and down the stairs and they didn't have an elevator. That reminds me of another teacher who we had who had come off of disability in Pennsylvania. And as soon as he got to our school, he had an accident because he said one of the students pushed him. The student did not push him, okay? This was one of my students. He said one of my students pushed him. The child is all of 50 pounds dripping wet. And so he, the next day, he wrote injured on the job. And he said, yeah, I'm going to go file and claim my workers' comp. And was he fired? No, he's steady getting his paycheck. Okay. But let's address that comment of the so-called parent. Let me tell you why I feel like it's probably not a parent from my class, but also if it is, let's just pretend that it is. Oops. And we'll see how ridiculous this sounds, right? Okay. Let me pull the comment back up here. This is why it's ridiculous. Let me just break down all the ways that this is ridiculous. One, we already talked about it. Ain't nobody getting fired from Baltimore City schools, okay? I don't even know what you would have to do. Maybe, I don't know. Number two, when I was teaching in Baltimore City, I taught the high group. So there was no one in my class who could not read, right? So that's why I'm like, okay, either this person is just a troll, and I have lots of trolls, so I have to delete. Either this person is just a troll. They kind of look like a troll because they had like one post, 5 followers, and most of the time those are just trolls. But they did have a profile picture, so maybe they weren't. But anyway, like I taught the high group. Now, there were some kids who, and the high group, by the way, meant kids who were just 1 year behind. So I was teaching fifth grade, and my kids were on a fourth grade reading level, right? And so I had people, okay, so the other part of this, now let's say that person's child was in my class. We would have some students go out to other classes, right? So if you were in the high group, you stayed in homeroom with me. But if your reading level was lower than the fourth grade, you went out. And I had maybe, not only, that's not true. I probably had like 7 or 8 students out of the 25 to 30 go out to the teacher, to the fourth grade teacher, because the fourth grade teacher was teaching like the low group, and she was a brand new teacher. And if your child didn't learn how to read in her class, oh well, because she's a first year teacher doing the best she can. And what can I tell you? Like, also the curriculum was good. I recommended it a few years ago. I don't recommend it anymore because I don't have access to it. I thought it was really good for my high group, but I'm not sure if it was phonics based. So I'm pretty sure the kids didn't learn that much in reading like that teacher would have liked. And also, one of the fourth grade classes went through like 5 teachers that year, and for half the year they didn't even have a teacher. So it was chaotic. So I'm sure she had more than just her kids in that class, because I had more than my kids in that class. At one point when I was teaching reading, I had 36 students in because other kids just wanted to just come in. As you guys saw, kids banging on the door, doing random stuff. Eventually I just be like, just come in, sit down and be quiet, and you can like have the reading lesson. So that's one thing. So that tells me that you don't know what you're talking about, because I did not teach behind readers. Or if your child was in my class, why didn't you know this? Why didn't you know that your child was so low that they were being sent out to a different teacher? So you didn't participate in your child's education. And the most blaring thing to me is like, why do you have a fifth grader who can't read? And let's say that they went through my class and they still can't read. That was how many years? That was like, wait, 2009, 4, 5. That was 5 years ago. So your child would now be in a 10th grade. Why can't your child read at this point? What have you done? What have you done? First of all, why did your child get to the 5th grade without you intervening? And then why'd you let him go another 5 years not knowing how to read, honey? That's why I started doing this and talking about reading, because in the end, like, it comes down to us as parents. You think your child is sitting there blaming their 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade teacher all the way up, being like, oh yeah, Baltimore City didn't teach me how to read. You have a mother and a father and lots of people around you who are responsible for you and your life outcomes. Okay. So that's my major point there. But the thing is, I don't want you guys to feel like I'm attacking you if you have 5th graders who can't read, because you're here, right? You're learning, and you're here to like figure out how to teach them. And a lot of parents do feel like the responsibility is on the school to teach children how to read. And this is what I always tell people. Yes, let me agree with you. And let me say it is the school's responsibility to teach your child to read. But who is your child going to hold account? Like, who is your child going to look back and say like, oh, this person really set me up or didn't set me up for a good future? Like, you have the power to change your child's future. You really think that the school is like sitting there and going to invest in your child like you would? Absolutely not. The other thing is, if this person is real, like, let's just say that they're real and not a troll. Why would you be following me on Instagram when I'm talking about reading stuff? Like, imagine your child had like, oh, the worst teacher, and like your child still can't read now, and you blame them for like your child not being able to read. Would you then follow that person? And I look, because sometimes with different trolls, they're not following you. They just like do this weird stuff. But I looked and they were actually following me. So I removed them as a follower and did them a favor, because if that is true, that's pretty messed up. And maybe you should seek information elsewhere. So there you go. That's it. Now let's oh, don't worry. Some people who are in the chat are also trolls. It's very, and I talked about this on my stories also. Like, there are people who will, I don't know why, but they'll like watch your videos, follow you, and like always comment all this negative stuff. And then when you block them, they go and they make other profiles so that they can comment on your stuff again. It's very weird. And even though Instagram, like, I block someone and it says block that person and all other accounts they create. So if they create another account with their same phone number or maybe email address for Instagram, Instagram will know. And so their comments won't show up. They'll still be blocked. But in order for them to be able to come back and comment again, guys, that means they had to create a fake email address to sign up for Instagram again, maybe use a Google voice, right? All just to comment on your stuff as a troll. That's so problematic. Not because I think it's scary, because I understand people have like issues, right? People have issues. That's why they show up to like lives and like comment stuff. But I just want to know, like, are you okay? Like, I get it when we were like 19, 20, 18, 16, but like you're a grown person now. And some of these people are like way grown, way grown by the comments that they leave. And I'm like, are they okay? Like, that's actually not, it's not funny, right? Imagine your mom sitting there like creating a new account because she wants to like go and like make a comment on somebody's page. Like, go take your mother out for breakfast or something. Like, get involved with her life so that she's not doing that. So anyway, that's why I mostly just block those comments. So anyway, that's the truth about what happened, just in case anyone has any questions. And just a reminder, like, keep up with education. Talk with your local school, talk with your teachers. That's why I say, even as homeschoolers, it is still, I believe, our responsibility to engage with the public school system, because we want to make it better. I don't want people out there who can be so easily swayed by misinformation, you know? Like, even to me, I promise you, the first thing when I saw that comment, and I saw a comment like that several months ago, like on a short, and I just ignored it. But the first thing I thought of was like, these people really think that teachers are getting fired from Baltimore City. Like, they really must not know what the situation is, because that would not happen. Right. So we don't want our kids to grow up in an uneducated America. We want all people in America to have a certain level of education, to be able to spot misinformation, lies, deceitfulness, and be able to easily say, like, okay, that's clearly not true because this, and that. And if you think it's true, hey, let's do some research to figure it out. Now, I know this is the internet. People aren't trying to do all that, but that's just what comes to my mind when I'm like, okay, this is the future for our children. So anyway, participate in schools. And I'm going to go back through and read your comments. And I will see you guys later. Goodbye. Thank you for joining.